Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias.
Well, I've been thinking of doing this video for quite some time, and it was basically going to be a video on the top 5 slip joint patterns that I tend to collect. And it was interesting as I was trying to do that. It was easy to grab 3 knives and then 4th knife and then the 5th knife, and then before I knew it, I'm looking at the top 5 slip joints that I actually seek out to collect. But it was there was at least 8 or 12 knives in that collection, so it wasn't working very well, and there's no way I could eliminate one of them. So what I have decided to do instead is to approach that video a little bit differently. And what this is the beginning of a series of videos that I'm going to be doing on collecting slip joints. And this first part is really the 5 knives that I feel are most often collected by folks who really like traditional slip joints. And I'll be honest with you that I picked out 3 of them fairly easily, and then it became a little more difficult for me to figure out what other knives the traditional slip joint crowd actually tend to lean towards, that they actually like to collect. And part of my opinion here is based off of some of the YouTube channels I watch and the way these knives are perceived on YouTube, as well as the way the industry kind of markets certain knives. And it seems like that kind of drives the industry as well. So these are not necessarily the 5 patterns that I traditionally collect. You can obviously tell that because right here is the Trapper. And I have my fair share of all of these patterns, even the Trapper, but they're not the knives that I normally go after. But I do believe that a lot of knife collectors really do seek out these particular traditional slip joints. And we will start with the obvious one on the table, and that is the Trapper. And this is the standard Trapper, 4 1/8 inches long, you know, with the 3.5 inch clip blade, and then the 3.5 inch spay blade. It is a knife that is obviously heavily collected, and it is heavily marketed as well. And I know that this is one of those knives that a lot of people like. The fact that the knife industry has a tendency to call any knife that could even remotely resemble a trapper, and the fact that the term Trapper has almost became generic for almost any kind of jackknife tells me that this is a very popular pattern. The only question I would have is, are more people these days interested in the mini Trapper versus the standard Trapper as the knife that they would rather have in their collection? I think this is still king. I think the Trapper is king among the collectors. This is the knife that is heavily marketed. It is Case's bread and butter. So you don't see it as often in other American-made companies, but even GEC and I believe even Berenson have something similar to the Trapper that they push out there. So Trapper is definitely number 1, especially among Case fans. Next up is a knife that I feel probably has spent more time in the pocket than the Trapper, but it has a lot more variety than the Trapper, and that's the Stockman. Now, this one here is by Western. This was by Remington. It was a Camillus made knife. This one is by Western. It was a gift to me, and it is a beautiful knife. Look at that pack of wood on there. And this is Western USA. in stainless. This is their W742. I love the wood on that. Got a wonderful clip blade on there. That is the blade that a lot of people want to see on their Stockman these days. And then it has two other blades on the back side. It has your sheep foot blade and a spay blade. This is probably the iconic version of the Stockman. I know the sow belly is very popular among Stockman collectors. Not a lot of companies in the United States are making sow bellies. I know Case is making a sow belly Stockman right now, but I don't know if other companies are or not. And that is the other thing about Case. I know a lot of people give them grief and everything, but among traditional slip joint collectors, I have to tell you, I still believe Case is king when it comes to making the collectors happy. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Are they perfect? I'm not going to go into that rant today. But in any case, I think the Stockman follows very closely behind the Trapper these days as one of the most collected patterns among traditional knife guys. You know, if you're into traditional slip joints, my bet is even if you're not a Stockman fan, if you're a collector of traditional slip joints, you got a couple Stockmans in your collection. I got more than my fair share of Stockmans, and it is not truly the ones that I actually seek out, but how can you not grab a Stockman when you see a beauty like that? Now, next in line is a Barlo. Now, this one is by Camillus, but the thing is there are a lot of really beautiful Barlows out there, and right now, like Baron's son has one that has like a sheep foot blade on it. That is all the talk of the town. It's a little bit bigger than this too. This is your typical size Barlow, 3 3/8 inches long. It's interesting that Case has their Barlow in the vault because the Barlow seems to be one of the most popular patterns out there, at least currently. In the collector world, everyone loves a good Barlow, and it seems to be a very popular knife now. Now, the history of the Barlow is kind of just the opposite. The Barlow, for the longest time, was just a cheap, inexpensive knife that was made for the boys out there. This is like a first knife that you would get. Unless you're talking about the Barlows coming out of England. But I believe even in England, originally, the Barlow was the knife that was made for the young kids and everything. It isn't until recently that they started really upgrading the quality of Barlows to make them, you know, high-end knives and stuff like that. They were often used for novelty knives and everything like that. And because of that, there's a lot of inexpensive Barlows out there on the secondary market. But you are seeing more and more higher end Barlows coming out from the knife collectors or from the knife companies, and the collectors are gobbling them up. So I think the Barlow is definitely one of the more popular brands or more popular patterns out there for the knife collector these days. And anyone on a budget really likes to look up the old Barlows by Imperial and Colonial and stuff like that, and Camillus, Camco. Just about every company imaginable had inexpensive Barlows, and they are a hot ticket item. I think a lot of people really like to buy Barlows. Wait a minute, wasn't there a Seahorse Whittler just here a minute ago? Yeah, there was. I had this knife here, and I was thinking of that being my fourth choice for a very popular collected brand, but really there's a knife that is more popular than a Whittler, and that is the Canoe. Everyone loves the Canoe. There's no doubt about that. and I understand its appeal. It's one of those knives that at one time, Case, I believe, was the one who came up with the concept of the Canoe and gave it the name and everything else. And when it first came out, it was not at all popular. But when it was relaunched later, it became a lot more popular. It has two blades. Typically, it has two blades at least. You have the large Spearmaster blade and then the secondary pin blade over here, which is not too small of a knife blade either. And it has the extended bolsters on both ends, so the has a very smooth ride in the pocket. And canoes are extremely popular among collectors. There's no doubt about that. I think this might even be more popular in the long run than the Barlo. The Barlo has had a spike recently, but canoes, despite its slow start among Case fans, has become an extremely popular handle to collect. And that's why I pulled out the Whittler and put the Canoe in place of it. And then next up is the Sidebuster. And I really can't say enough about the Sidebuster. Originally, this was just your basic work knife, and even Case approached it that way, as just a basic work knife. This was thrown into their budget line. It originally, for the longest time, just had either a black Delrin cover or a yellow Delrin cover. And the difference between the black and the yellow was the black was typically in Case True Sharp, and the yellow Delrin was typically the carbon steel. Now earlier, when Case was just using carbon steel, both knives were, I don't even know if they had the yellow Delrin earlier. I think the original Sidebusters and Sidebuster Juniors were just in black, and they had a carbon steel blade. But when the stainless steel blade came along, I believe the black handles ones ended up getting the stainless steel blade, and then the yellow Delrin was introduced, and it had the CV blades. So that's, I think, the way it worked. I'm sure some Case expert out there will correct me if I'm wrong. And what I've always loved about the Sidebusters was the big old bird's eye rivet at the top there. And the reason I believe, well, they've always remained popular knives for users, because it has a very good blade for a user knife. I mean, a nice hollow point or a hollow grind blade with, you know, it's just basically a straight Skinner blade going on with it. And very usable, very easy to use, great for everyday tasks, a great steak knife, you know, great little Skinner if you need it for skinning, and also just for any other kind of task out there. So that's why it's always been a very popular user knife. And because it's a popular user knife and a very inexpensive knife, compared to many of the other knives out there, it became very popular among collectors. And Case decided to capitalize off of that. And that's how you ended up seeing Case come out with Sidebusters and bone handles, and they've even put it in their 6.5 bone stag. I don't know if they've done it in actual genuine stag, but if they thought it would sell, I'm sure Case would do that. And just about every knife company out there offers some kind of Sidebuster. Sidebuster is a word that is, or two words that are trademarked by W.R. Case & Son. Sidebuster is two words, S-O-D, the first word, Buster, B-U-S-T-E-R, for the second word is the trademarked name. However, Case does not have a trademark on Sidebuster as one word, so I joke that if you want to talk about these knives, you can still call it a Sidebuster. Just make sure you're using one word and not two words. And I have seen a couple knife companies actually call their knife a Sidebuster, one word. I believe, what's that company down in El Salvador? Condor, the company in El Salvador, they actually had a knife that they sold at one time, and they came right out and called it a Sidebuster. And I believe it was sold as a one-word knife, so Sidebuster. But you'll see it as Mule Skinner, Clodbuster, Dirtbuster, all sorts of things. Bullnose, I think that's the GEC name for it, is the Bullnose. And Rough Rider just calls it a work knife. It's slipping my mind what Bear & Son has theirs called. Bear & Son offers a variety of knives based off of the Sidebuster pattern. So I know this is a knife that a lot of people like to collect. I've got quite a few Sidebusters in my collection too, so I know that's a biggie. So that's the fifth one, and I think this is a more recent knife that people have started collecting. Same with the Barlo. The Canoe has been a popular knife among collectors for several years. For several years. And, well, these two are probably the king and queen when it comes to collectibles, because they are knives that have just always been around. And the Trapper, especially by Case, is promoted heavily. And the Stockman is just a true American icon. I mean, this is the knife. This is the true grandpa knife as far as I'm concerned. Who doesn't have a grandpa who probably had a Stockman in their pocket at one time or another? So those are the 5 knives that I think are probably the most collected traditional pattern slip joints out there at the current moment. What I'm asking from you now, though, is, well, if you don't have a YouTube channel, leave the comments below. If you have a YouTube channel, tell me where I'm wrong. And tell me what are your top 5 traditional pattern knives that you seek out to collect. I'm really curious about that. Now, these are not my top 5. These are the top 5 that I believe people are out there collecting. And this, I would be hard pressed for somebody to tell me that I'm wrong on the Trapper. I could see any of these 3 down here, someone saying, no, these are not knives that are habitually collected by traditional slip joint collectors. But these 2, I can't see anyone arguing that they're not included. But even if they are included among what you think most people collect, they may not be a knife that you personally seek out to collect. And that's really more what I'm interested in, is it's kind of twofold. What is it that you habitually try to collect when you're looking at traditional slip joints? And on the reverse side, what is it that you think other people traditionally collect when it comes to slip joints? I will have a couple more videos on this in the near future. I'm going to try and do like a weekly series, and at the end of it, I will show you the knives that I am almost always seeking out to collect, and it'll probably be more than 5. But in any case, I thought this would be a great way to kick this off, and look forward to hearing what you have to say about my choices here.
Let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with Tobias. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.